Young Max Skinner bowed his head over the chessboard as his uncle Henry, his opponent, uncorked a bottle of his own vintage wine. Offering the boy a few drops diluted with water, he enthusiastically shared insights about the characteristics of various wine varieties. A wise man, deeply passionate about the drink and the craft to which he had dedicated his entire life, Henry spoke with fervor. Meanwhile, the small yet precociously intelligent boy made his move. Checkmate. He won the game against his wise relative. Those days are now long gone. Max Skinner is no longer a boy but a top-tier businessman, a first-class financier known for his pragmatism and emotional restraint. Leading a major company, he skillfully outplays his competitor, deftly manipulating bonds on the market in real time. His subordinates practically worship him. The company's founder holds him in high regard. His name appears in newspapers, and envious rivals flood the media with negative reviews, which Max considers nothing more than flattery. After another day of being at the top of his game, feeling satisfied with himself, Max arrives home. As part of his routine, he sifts through his mail, but one particular letter catches his eye, instantly changing his emotional state. Upon reading its contents, he learns that his Uncle Henry, the very man with whom he had spent such wonderful childhood days in the French Provence, has passed away. It turns out that Max is his closest living relative, which means the old estate and vineyards in France now belong to him. He's far from thrilled about the urgent trip required to settle the matter, but his assistant has already booked his flight. At that moment, he admits to himself that he hadn't spoken to his beloved uncle in decades, probably because he had grown into a complete bastard. At first, Max assumes that inheriting the estate will be nothing but a burden. Maintaining an old, rundown house in rural France hardly seems like a profitable endeavor. However, when he meets with his friend and lawyer, Charles, he receives surprising news. The estate he has inherited is actually worth a considerable amount. Suddenly, his perspective shifts. Now he can't wait to get rid of the property, cash in a hefty sum, and return to his usual life. Upon landing at the airport, Max discovers that a small, modest car has been reserved for him. Though annoyed by the inconvenience, he continues managing work calls remotely. It turns out the tiny car is an inside joke from his assistant, who is remotely guiding him to the estate with verbal directions. His navigation system has inconveniently broken down. Because of this delay, Max misses his appointment with the notary, meaning he won't be able to wrap things up as quickly as he had hoped. The meeting is rescheduled for the next day. Carefully, he steps into the old house and calls out, but no one responds. Meanwhile, we see the Duflos, a married couple who have been tending to the estate and its vineyards for many years. Simple, kind-hearted people, they are preparing to welcome home the new master of the house, the boy they last saw as a child. As Max explores the stunningly beautiful and cozy surroundings where he once spent his childhood, a wave of nostalgia washes over him. Memories resurface, his uncle teaching him to play tennis, sharing pieces of wisdom that shaped Max into the man he is today. He then encounters Francis Duflo, and the two men barely recognize each other at first. They have both changed over the years. Eccentric and dedicated to his work, Francis spends most of his time laboring in the vineyards under the scorching sun, which hasn't done much for his personal hygiene. Max, unaccustomed to such rustic realities, finds the encounter a bit jarring. After bidding farewell to his old acquaintance, he stumbles upon a postcard at home, a warm welcome message. He appreciates the gesture and decides to open a bottle of the local wine. Max honors the memory of his Uncle Henry with a sip of wine, but the taste immediately disappoints him. Suddenly, he encounters Madame Duflo, Francis's wife, inside the house. She greets him warmly, remembering the little boy she once knew. After briefly discussing the estate's current affairs, Max sets off for his meeting with the notary. Over the phone, Max updates Charlie, telling him that the house is in poor condition and that the wine is so unbearable it's practically undrinkable. Nothing is as they had expected. Charlie urges him not to panic and asks him to take some photos of the estate and its surroundings. During their conversation while driving, Max drops his phone. As he fumbles to retrieve it, he nearly runs over a young woman on a bicycle. At the notary's office, Max bluntly states that he wants to sell the estate and land as quickly as possible. The woman understands his desire, but expresses concern for Monsieur and Madame Duflo, who had worked alongside Uncle Henry for over 20 years, producing wine and maintaining the vineyards. However, Max is indifferent. He has no intention of keeping the struggling estate afloat and firmly declares that his real life is waiting for him back in London. Francis is outraged by Max's scandalous decision. News spreads quickly through the small Provençal community. Desperate to change Max's mind, Francis pleads with him, arguing that he has spent his entire life working in the vineyards. This is his life's work. But Max has no interest in a debate. He tries to settle the matter with money, promising to be generous and offer Francis a share of the land's sale. This only infuriates Duflo further. He loses his temper and vows that he will not give up without a fight. Already on his way to the airport, Max suddenly remembers that he forgot to take the photos Charlie had requested, pictures of the house and the land to assist with the legal process of selling the estate. Annoyed but determined to wrap things up, he turns back and hastily completes the task. However, revisiting these places only deepens his immersion in childhood memories. Rushing to catch his flight for an important meeting with senior executives, Max hurries across the estate, only to misstep and fall into a deep, empty swimming pool. To his shock, he realizes that there's no ladder inside. His meticulously planned schedule crumbles in an instant. The young woman driving nearby spots Max's car, the very one that nearly ran her over earlier. Realizing that the driver is now helpless at the bottom of an empty pool, she seizes the opportunity for revenge. When Max desperately asks for help, she simply turns on the water and walks away. Naturally, he misses his flight, and as a result, an important meeting. His assistant later informs him that the company's leadership has suspended him for a week. For the first time in years, Max is forced into something resembling a vacation. Though frustrated, he insists that he'll be back to work in just a few days. In fact, he asks his assistant to discreetly set things up so that he can continue trading bonds through his right-hand man, without the executives realizing it. After all, work is his true passion and the company is his priority. Meanwhile, Charlie urges Max to tidy up the estate to make it more appealing for potential buyers. Using his business acumen, Max strikes a deal with Francis, who is desperate to keep working in the vineyards. Max persuades Duflo to help clean up the house and land in exchange for his promise to convince the future owners not to fire such a valuable worker. As they work together, Max is once again overcome with nostalgia. Memories of his childhood resurface, days spent at Uncle Henry's estate, lessons in tennis, words of wisdom. The past, which he had buried beneath years of ambition and corporate success, begins to feel closer than ever. One day, everything changes when Madame Duflo unexpectedly informs Max that a mysterious visitor has arrived for him. The guest turns out to be a young woman named Christy Roberts, who introduces herself as the illegitimate daughter of his Uncle Henry. Max is completely stunned by the revelation. Realizing the potential complications this could cause with the inheritance, he immediately calls Charlie to update him on the situation. Without wasting time, he rushes to see the notary, who delivers even more unsettling news. Under French law, there is no distinction between legitimate and illegitimate children when it comes to inheritance. Even worse, if Christy can prove her relation to Henry, she has the right to overturn any sale of the property. Max's only hope of selling the estate now is to treat Christy with the utmost respect and hope that she chooses not to claim her share, simply taking her leave instead. Later, at a small local restaurant, Max spots a familiar face, the waitress who had nearly drowned him in the pool. Engaging in a heated exchange, he learns that she had acted out of revenge because he had almost run her over with his car. However, beneath the bickering, Max finds himself captivated by her fiery personality. Intrigued, he asks Francis about the mysterious waitress. Her name is Fanny Chanal, and she's well known in the area, a true local beauty. Max, against his better judgment, realizes that she has left quite an impression on him. Preparing for dinner with his unexpected guest, Christy, Max decides to select the finest wine to impress her. Once again, childhood memories come to his aid, guiding him toward the perfect choice. When Christy tastes it, she's absolutely delighted. As they talk, it becomes clear that she has a deep knowledge of wine, and she confidently declares that what's produced here is truly exceptional. Later, Max heads to the restaurant where Fanny works. The place is packed, and she's barely managing to keep up with the demanding customers. Without hesitation, Max grabs an apron and jumps in to help, relying on the skills he picked up working in restaurants during his early years. Exhausted but amused, Fanny finally gives in and allows him to assist her. Max's hard work and charm don't go unnoticed. He handles the pressure impressively, and despite herself, Fanny is impressed. However, when he asks her out for a drink after the shift, she flatly refuses. Undeterred, Max decides to be persistent. He waits for her outside the restaurant after closing time, determined to win her over. Eventually, Fanny surrenders to his undeniable charisma and agrees to meet him. While waiting for his date with Fanny, Max keeps himself busy with his work at the estate. Meanwhile, Christy learns more about her father's vineyards from Francis, who eagerly shares details about their history and production. Suddenly, Charles calls Max with great news. The potential buyers were very impressed by the photos he took. Excited by their interest, the lawyer announces that he will personally visit the estate to finalize the sale. That evening, Max attends a dinner at the Dufloses' home, where Christy has also been invited. To his surprise, the hosts have gone to great lengths to prepare a warm and welcoming evening. He takes a seat at the table, but it doesn't take long before he starts openly questioning Christy about her past. His goal is clear. He wants to know if she has any concrete proof that she is, in fact, Henry's daughter. His blunt interrogation creates an uncomfortable atmosphere at the table. Christy is visibly uneasy, caught off guard by his skepticism. She insists that she is not here for money or property. She only wants to learn more about her family. But Max refuses to let up, continuing to cast doubt on her claims. Later that night, feeling overwhelmed and perhaps a little hurt, Christy drinks too much and wanders off into the vineyards. When Max finds her, he helps her back to the house. On the way, they finally have a candid conversation. Christy once again tries to make him understand that her only wish is to find her relatives. As she sleeps, Max finally allows himself to be vulnerable. Speaking softly into the quiet of the night, he admits that he always loved Henry but never told him. And now, that regret weighs heavily on him. For the first time, he feels ashamed. Later, Max arranges for an enologist, a specialist in viticulture and winemaking, to visit the estate. The expert's task is to evaluate the local wine and every stage of its production, including the condition of the soil. If the report turns out favorable, Max will have a much better chance of selling the estate quickly and at a higher price. At the same time, Max receives unsettling news from his assistant. His trusted right-hand man, the one person he believed he could rely on, is taking advantage of his absence. The man is maneuvering to permanently take over Max's position, claiming credit for the department's success and solidifying his influence within the company. Meanwhile, the oenologist delivers a shocking verdict after completing his analysis. His final assessment is brutally honest. The local wine is atrocious. Holding nothing back, he tells Max that the vineyards are in such poor condition that they would be better suited for growing potatoes or pumpkins rather than grapes. He criticizes everything: the wine itself, the soil, the vineyard's upkeep, leaving no room for optimism. Christy and Max find themselves in yet another heated argument over the late Uncle Henry. Max insists that Christy's assumptions about her father are nothing but fantasies, dismissing her sentimentality as misguided. Furious and deeply hurt, Christy snaps back, saying that only a complete idiot would want to sell such a magnificent estate. She declares that she no longer wishes to see him. Despite her anger, she remains firm in her original intentions. She truly came to Provence with good intentions, not to claim an inheritance. She promises to leave the very next day and makes it clear that she has no interest in disputing the estate. To Max, this is the best possible outcome. Later, while sorting through Uncle Henry's old belongings, Max stumbles upon a photograph, Henry with an American woman. Digging deeper, he realizes that this woman is most likely Christy's mother. The reason? He found out that the girl had the same photo with her. Meanwhile, Charlie arrives in Provence, only to be met with bad news. The oenologist's scathing review has slashed nearly €1 million from the estate's original valuation. While Charlie is frustrated, Max couldn't care less. At this point, he just wants to get rid of the property, at any price. Still focused on business, Max calls his right-hand man, secretly instructing him on their bond trading strategy so they can operate behind the company's back. However, somehow Max's competitor gets wind of the plan and moves ahead, anticipating his every move. Someone has leaked the information, and now Max's carefully laid strategy is in jeopardy. Max arrives for his date with Fanny, bringing his best charm and presenting her with a bottle of the finest wine. As they enjoy the evening, Charlie finds himself in an unexpectedly intimate situation with Christy, helping her soothe her sunburned back. Both pairs grow closer through their conversations. Max, uncharacteristically open, admits to Fanny that he is a harsh and emotionally distant person. In response, Fanny reveals that she knew his Uncle Henry and that despite everything, Henry always held Max in high regard. The conversation softens them both, and soon, emotions take over. A romantic kiss leads to a passionate night together. However, Max's satisfaction is abruptly shattered the next morning when Fanny delivers a cold and unexpected revelation. She confesses that the only reason she spent the night with him was because she knew there was no future between them. He will sell the estate and leave, never to return. It's easier this way. Stunned, Max reacts the only way he knows how, with a practical solution. He makes a serious proposal, offering to take Fanny with him to London, where he will open a restaurant just for her. But instead of being flattered, Fanny is deeply offended. She sees through his assumption that she only stays in Provence because she has no other choice. He completely misjudged her. For her, it was never about location. It was about a way of life. And Max, despite everything, still doesn't understand that. Everything is set for the sale of the estate. Max praises Charlie for negotiating a decent price, acknowledging his efforts. However, as he reviews the final documents, he makes an unexpected confession. He's having doubts. Against all logic, it seems he has fallen for Fanny. Charlie, ever the pragmatist, dismisses his concerns. He insists that what Max is feeling is nothing but fleeting passion, something that will soon pass. He reminds Max of the reality. Max Skinner, the top businessman, doesn't take vacations, doesn't have weekends, and certainly doesn't indulge in hobbies. His only skill is making money, and that's exactly what he should focus on. All he needs to do is sign the papers and move on. But as Max stares at the documents, memories flood his mind. Uncle Henry's voice echoes in his head, reminding him that land doesn't just need sun and rain to thrive, it also needs harmony. At that very moment, Francis appears, sensing that the deal is nearly finalized. Overcome with guilt, he confesses the truth. The oenologist's damning review was a setup. Francis had paid him off to intentionally give a negative assessment of the wine and vineyards. He had hoped that if Max believed the estate was failing, he would abandon the sale and leave everything as it was, preserving what Henry had built. Francis goes even further, revealing that Henry always wanted to leave the estate to Max, but hesitated, fearing that Max didn't know how to appreciate life beyond wealth and business. But the revelation comes too late. Max has already signed the documents. Francis is devastated. The plan failed, and now the estate is lost. Meanwhile, Christy prepares to leave the estate, saying her goodbyes to Charlie. Just before she departs, Max hands her a book. Inside, she discovers a letter, allegedly from Henry himself, stating that he wished to leave her an inheritance. In that moment, we realize the truth. Max wrote the letter himself while staying at the estate. He had forged Henry's signature, just as he used to do as a child when signing his uncle's checks. Charlie informs the new buyers that the deal has been canceled. An unexpected will has been discovered, effectively nullifying the sale. Meanwhile, Max returns to work in London, slipping effortlessly back into his old routine. His right-hand man has been fired after losing millions in a failed market move. The irony? It was Max himself who leaked the data to his competitors, ensuring his colleague's downfall the moment he realized the man was plotting to steal his position. When confronted about it, Max simply shrugs, feigning innocence. After all, he was officially on forced leave at the time. Max then faces his boss, who is far from pleased. In the few days that London's top financier was away, the company suffered significant losses. The executive rants about the chaos that unfolded in Max's absence. But instead of reprimanding him, the CEO makes him an offer, one too tempting to ignore. To prevent anything like this from happening again, he presents Max with an unparalleled deal, lifetime partnership, an exclusive contract that will make him unimaginably wealthy for the rest of his life. As Max ponders the offer, his mind drifts back into memories of Provence. Suddenly it all clicks. He finally remembers why Fanny's face seemed so familiar. They had met before, in his childhood. Max's assistant urges him to accept the promotion, pointing out that it would finally put him on equal footing with his boss. But that realization terrifies him. In a complete change of heart, Max walks away from it all. He returns to Provence, determined to see Fanny one more time. When they meet, he makes a raw and heartfelt confession. He has quit his job and left his entire past behind for her. He chooses her over wealth, status, and power. Fanny is stunned, caught off guard by his unexpected transformation. But as the truth sinks in, she realizes that he really means it. Overwhelmed, she pulls him in, and they share a passionate kiss. Over time, Max fully embraces his new life in Provence. He relishes the slow pace, the vineyards, the sunshine, and the sense of belonging. He instructs Charlie to sell his London apartment, officially severing ties with his former life. Though Charlie remains skeptical, convinced that Max will eventually grow restless, Max doesn't care. For the first time in years, he is at peace, and more importantly, he is happy. The end. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment to help promote the content. It's important and appreciated by us. You can also check out other recaps available on the channel. Take care and goodbye.